Palestine and Israel. It's complicated. Well, at least that's what some people would like you to think. We've long been sold the narrative of a tit-for-tat skirmish of rockets, a real estate dispute, or even a centuries-old religious feud. There's so much more to the story of Palestine we all need to know. So, how did we get here? Let's take it back to the beginning. It starts with the end of a world war, Muslims fighting each other, and a promise made by the West only a century ago. So here's how the story begins. It's 1916, and the First World War is raging on. The Ottoman Empire is 617 years old at this point and is on the brink of collapse. The British and the French had promised the Arabs sovereignty and Arab leadership over the Arabian Peninsula and the Levant if they helped them defeat the Ottomans. And so the Arabs said, okay, and so they helped them defeat the Ottomans. Now I know what you're thinking. What's this got to do with Palestine and the creation of Israel? Just trust me, we'll get there. Okay, so when the British and the French won, the Arabs wanted the land that was promised to them, but little did they know, the British and the French had this little top secret meeting. And in this top secret meeting, it was planned that the captured Ottoman province will be divided into areas of British and French control and influence. The British would receive Palestine, Jordan, and southern Iraq, while the French would control southeastern Turkey, northern Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. This was called the Sykes-Picot Agreement. But then the Arabs found out about this agreement and they were shocked. They had been bamboozled and tricked. They thought that they were fighting a war in order to overthrow their non-Arab Muslim rulers, only to end up with, you guessed it, European colonial rulers instead. Anyway, that's a long story for another video. Now that the British occupy Palestine, something unusual is happening back in Europe. You see, the Zionist movement had been growing increasingly influential and lobbied hard to support the mass migration of Jews to Palestine and recognize a Jewish claim to the Palestinian land. And in 1917, Britain out of nowhere publicly declared its intentions of establishing a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. So the British just gifted Palestine, a country which was made up of 90% Palestinians, to European Zionists. They gave it just like you would give a box of chocolates. Historians still debate till this day why the British gave Palestine to Zionists. It's simply baffling. Now, at this point, the Jewish population in Palestine was less than 10%. So when the British started to facilitate the immigration of European Jews to Palestine from 1922 and 1935, the Jewish population rose to 27%. With the British mandate in full swing, mass European Jewish immigration meant that more land would be seized and the native Palestinian population grew increasingly worried. The Palestinians would demonstrate their concerns to their British overlords, but they wouldn't have it. European Jewish settlement was on the rise. The British proposed a partition of Palestine and even advised the forceful removal of the Arab population from their homes. And yes, this was their plan to resolve the issue. So the Palestinians naturally rejected this proposal and revolted against the British. The revolts were crushed violently, killing thousands of Palestinians. But the Palestinians wouldn't give up. They would continue their fight for independence, and the British were clearly fed up. So in 1947, the British decided to hand over the responsibility for Palestine to the United Nations. So basically, they just said, here, clean our mess. And so the UN proposed this ridiculous proposal again, where Palestine will be partitioned into a Jewish and Arab state. Remember, Jews in Palestine only constituted 1/3 of the population, most of whom arrived from Europe just a few years earlier. Yet, in this proposal, they were allocated 55% of the land. Feeling like they got a bad deal again, the Arabs rejected the proposal, and the Zionists accepted. However, here's the catch. The Zionists didn't agree to the proposed borders, and even campaigned for more land. So they agreed to an Israeli state, but didn't agree to the size of it, so they can just choose it for themselves. By 1948, Zionist militia would storm and capture Palestinian-populated villages and cities, leaving thousands of Palestinians homeless and landless. The Zionists wanted to seize and cleanse as much land from Palestine before the British would officially withdraw their forces. And on the same day that they left, the Zionists proclaimed the establishment of the new Israeli state. Overnight, millions of Palestinians lost their country. And what's even more bizarre is that immediately the two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, recognized the new state of Israel. And if it couldn't get any worse, May 15th, 1948 was perhaps one of the darkest days in Palestine's history. They called it the Nakba, or the catastrophe. To lose your country, your identity, and your home just like that is something truly horrifying. But that wasn't enough for those Palestinian men, women, and children. They had to be ethnically cleansed from their lands and driven into near total destruction. See, the creation of the State of Israel didn't just mean that 1.9 million Palestinians were forced out of their homes. Didn't just mean that 78% of historic Palestine had been taken from its natives. Didn't just mean that 530 villages and cities were destroyed and ethnically cleansed. And didn't just mean the killing of 15,000 Palestinians in a series of mass atrocities. It means that it was the start of something even more horrifying for the Palestinian people. It signaled over 70 years of occupation, home demolitions, arbitrary arrests, displacements, Israeli expansion, military checkpoints, construction of walls, discrimination, massacres, and bombing of innocent men, women, and children in their own homes. So no, it's not complicated. The Palestinians are a people who have been oppressed and had their lands taken away from them and have been suffering ever since. This is how the events of the past shape the conditions of today. This is why it is important to remember and reflect our history before it repeats itself again. Because Allah knows we don't need it to happen again in another part of the world. May Allah lift the pain and the struggles from our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Ameen.
But it was the rising tension in Palestine that held world attention. Partition had brought a new flare-up in the strife between Arab and Jew. Politically, the conflict appeared to be settled. In actual fact, it had only just begun. The United Nations Special Committee had advocated separate Jewish and Arab states as the uneasy compromise. The plan was accepted by 33 votes to 13. Alexander Cadogan, Britain's representative, abstained. Prince Faisal of Saudi Arabia headed the Arab country's opposition. The Jewish state will include the ports of Haifa and Tel Aviv and the whole of the Negev Valley. The Arab will occupy the fertile eastern part. Jerusalem will come under United Nations trusteeship. First reaction from the Jews was one of joy. Crowds gathered in the streets and greeted the birth of their state with traditional dances. Britain's civic administration is expected to withdraw by May. Jews and Arabs will then govern themselves. Arab opposition to the partition scheme has been violent. The call for a holy war against the Jews went out from Cairo. A three-day general strike coincided with an intensive recruiting campaign. As in India, transfer of power in Palestine will bring bloodshed. Two states have been born. For the Holy Land, the immediate future would not bring peace.
If you're the real Israelites, who are these people over there in the land of Israel claiming to be you? Those are Romans, Europeans. They got pushed up in the South Georgia, Russia, in the Caucasus Mountains, and hid themselves under the name of Khazars. Between the 8th and 9th century, the Khazarian Empire under King Bulan adopted the traditions of the Israelites and mixed it with paganism and called it Judaism. Yes, we know your history too. Then after the Holocaust, which was politically motivated, the elite used that as a pretext to invade the land of Israel and took those Khazarian converts and placed them in that land in 1948.
In May of 1948, a new Jewish state, Israel, was born in a bath of blood. Jewish troops routed Arab forces from the city of Haifa in the first of a series of battles that were to reverberate through the years. In the year of independence, fighting was fierce in the Negev desert area. Here, Israeli troops routed the Arabs and took hundreds of prisoners. Meanwhile, on May 14, 1948, the new government, headed by David Ben-Gurion, is installed in Tel Aviv. Thus, for the first time since the Roman legion destroyed Jerusalem in the year 70 AD, the Jewish people have a nation of their own. United Nations teams accompany Israeli soldiers under the white flag to retrieve the bodies of soldiers killed in the continuing strife with Arab troops. The UN was able to effect some uneasy facts calling for a truce, but skirmishes continued to break out. Dr. Chaim Weizmann joined Premier Ben-Gurion in the government. The Jewish patriot became president as Israel went before the United Nations to seek a place in that world body. The Middle Eastern Arabic nations were in violent opposition, and when Israel was voted a membership, they walked out in a body. For the rest of the day, their seats remained empty, but they returned the next morning to no further incident. Thus, history was made as the Jewish state of Israel was born. Conceived in strife and weaned on violence, Israel has flourished to become a constructive voice in world affairs. Her flag became a symbol of hope.
To destabilize the Middle East. Prior to that, those people never lived in the land of Israel. Prior to 1948, those people never stepped foot in the land of Israel. Those are Europeans hiding themselves, European Romans hiding themselves under Jewish. That's what they keep doing each time. They keep going different places and taking on different nationalities. They're the same exact people. These are the same exact people that funded your transatlantic slave trade. Yes, the same Jewish man. The same Romans. These are the same people that's responsible for your 400-year short span Black history curriculum. These are the same exact people that control the media outlets and push rap music on the whole Black community and support it and push it on the forefront. The same exact people. They control all the media. These are the same exact people that are responsible for your Christian churches in all the neighborhoods in the Black community. The Bible says when the real Jews get in the land of Israel, there will be no more war. Since those converts, Khazarian converts, went into the land, it's only been war. They don't fit the prophecies. They over there dealing with Satan. I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan, using the Babylonian Talmud as their authoritative source. These people are not the real Jews, and they have nothing to do with the Most High God and the biblical Israelites. They're not the real Jews, and they're dealing with Satan at the highest level. What are these nations trying to accomplish by suppressing all this information? What you're going to realize is that there's a group of nations that are confederate together that have been trying to get rid of the Israelites from way back when so they can offset the Bible prophecies. Keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. The elite know that America, according to the Bible, is the last kingdom before the return of the Messiah. It's the last reigning kingdom, called Babylon the Great, or the Little Horn. And they're trying to offset prophecy and prolong their rulership, because they know that when Christ returns, he and the 144,000 are going to be the next ruling government on the planet Earth. And he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. As the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I received of my Father. And I heard the number of them which were sealed, And there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. The elite don't want this prophecy to go forth. They're going to do anything in their power to offset the prophecies and prolong their rulership. Because they know that once the Israelites are in rulership or in authority, that all these nations that had a hand in enslaving the Israelites, they all going in captivity. It's going to be their turn for servitude. For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place. And the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were. And they shall rule over their oppressors. Therefore, all they that devour thee shall be devoured. And all thine adversaries, every one of them, shall go into captivity. And they that spoil thee shall be a spoil. And all that prey upon thee will I give for a prey. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into